time when we need to be thinking differently. I think Andy and also me and even Dr. Sham, I think, mentioned a little bit about the need for reimagining. And why am I saying that? If you think about where we are today, or where we were before, most of us were doing our activities in a siloed way in many different touch points or different channels. Today, whether it's shopping, playing, working, living, educating, all has basically collided into this one device. We now have this as our life. So what does that mean in reality? We have gone, or in practicality, we have gone over a very short period of time from a life which was in the physical form, most of our activities were in the physical form, to transition towards the online or digital world. So there are two different worlds we are living in today. We operate in the physical world and also in the online world. The second factor, if we think about when the operating model for countries was developed, or we came up with the concept of how we should run a country, that dates back to many hundreds of years, when the main ingredient into running of the affairs of a state were people. We had very little technology, let alone ICT. I mean, ICT is a revelation of the last maybe a couple of decades. Okay, it's been there since the 60s and 70s, but in its exponential form, it really happened in the last couple of decades. So when everything around has changed so much and is changing even further. So if we look at now, what are people predicting, and number of studies you can see, 1.2 billion 5G connected devices by 2025. We are looking at each one of us having 15 connected devices per person by 2030. Significant change. Right now we're just talking about a mobile phone, but we're talking about even device-to-device connectivity, and not just what we are using for communication purposes. And we are talking about something like 41.6 billion connected devices by 2025. This is a totally different world to where we are living in today and where it's going. So the question I asked myself, and I'm asking everyone else, does this mean that we should stay in the way we're operating and approach things in the way? Most of our actions on embracing digital technologies being what I call of a practical and fundamental nature. We have not questioned the operating model in many cases, or why we really need to do what we do today. So all of this has been going on in my mind for some time. I've been working in government for a number of years. Before that, I started my career within the UK government, so I had hands-on experience of being a government employee and working from that perspective, transitioned into the industry and then into consulting. So all of this, and what I'm seeing over the last few years, and that really we are living in a different era to where we were before. So we really need to reimagine the state, not just the government. Most people are looking at digital from a government lens perspective. And government is one pillar typically of running a state, the other two pillars being the legislature and also judiciary. But in the world we're living today, which has shifted so much, should we also be looking to add maybe another two pillars to how we run the state because of how the world has changed? And one of those pillars is media. We often talk about media being the fourth pillar, but why not make that a defined pillar of running of a state? And the fifth one, which I believe now has become more relevant than it ever was before, is citizens. The reason why we have the models of working that we have today is because we have a representative model of running a state. The reason, in essence, there could be multiple, but in essence, was that it was not practical for 1 million, 2 million, or 3 million people to run the day-to-day affairs of a state. So you selected your representatives to run and manage a state on behalf of the majority. So that was a practical reason. But today, with the shift in technology, where I can actually be connected with my parliament or representative on a day-to-day basis, algorithms can be used, machine learning or AI can be used to keep me connected. And for those most important things for myself as an individual, I want to raise up to my member of parliament who can go or my representative who can go up and make this a priority or try and fight for that for my particular area where I live in, is possible today. So I believe that we are at a very defining moment in history where everything has shifted so much towards technology becoming the bedrock of everything we do. So it gives us an opportunity to really rethink the operating model for a country. And I feel those mentioned that having something like a smart government, smart legislator, smart judiciary, adding the smart media and smart citizen with the core principles of basically looking at governments having their focus being what I call citizen life experiences. And their core built around this data and big data has become the fundamental building block for governments of the future. And the model that they operate is being ecosystem based. So not wanting to do everything themselves, but becoming more of a facilitator, more of an enabler, and then leveraging the ecosystem to really make it possible for everything to happen and being more citizen focused. But from a business perspective, being very much digital first, because we know that technology is now becoming our first choice for communicating. Online digital is becoming that for all citizens and users of government services and even private sector. But having the obsession with outcomes. So not about producing things for the sake of producing, but being driven with clear outcomes, clear purpose, and using technology to drive that. So that's in essence the concept of the idea. It's at a philosophical stage. Obviously, there is a lot to think about, a lot to do. And it's not saying that governments around the world are not, or countries around the world are not embracing some of these. You see many countries where they are using participatory model of running, doing budgetary processes or problem solving, getting citizens much more involved and businesses much more involved. And you see some examples, even in the UAE, in Dubai, we see some very interesting examples of how they are starting to build a smart state. So when you put it all together, you're coming up with a different way of moving forward as a whole country.